Would you believe me if I told you there was a condo crisis headed for Florida? A financial tsunami of epic proportions? Well, you should, and today I'm going to tell you why. Hey everyone, I'm Paul, your local YouTube realtor here in South Florida, and welcome back to my channel. I'm sitting in front of the town hall here in South Palm Beach, right next to Lantana along A1A, and I'm sitting in between the Intercoastal Waterway behind me, which is to my west, and the Atlantic Ocean, which is right in front of me to the east. And sandwiched in between those two bodies of water are thousands of condos. Condos over here, condos over there, and this scene, a condo row, as you will call it, is replicated all throughout the state of Florida. East Coast, West Coast, everywhere. And for many, they bought these condos back in the 80s and the 90s, maybe in the 70s, and they bought them pretty inexpensively. And at the time, the monthly HOA fees were pretty inexpensive as well. I know some people bought these condos for $50,000, $80,000, and they only had a monthly HOA of maybe $100, maybe $200. And that was that way for a long time. Now, I specifically chose this area because there's a lot of condos up and down this street. It's got a great sidewalk for walking on, which makes it easy for me. And it is right next to the ocean and the water. And part of what I'm going to talk about today has a lot to do about what happens to these condos, the wear and tear that takes place in a condo building, especially one that's sitting right there on the ocean, with the salt air and sand and hurricanes and tropical storms and just the elements consistently beating on the buildings. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Now, I mentioned in the video that a lot of the people who have these condos throughout Florida are snowbirds. It's like a second home for them. But there's also a whole bunch of people who have condos as their primary residence. And a lot of those people are retirees, people on fixed income. And they bought those condos, as I said, 20, 30 years ago. They got it at a good price, and the monthly HO fee wasn't so bad. So if you've been following the news, you've seen that insurance in the state of Florida has progressively been getting worse and worse and more costly for homeowners. A lot of that has to do with the insurance claims that people put on roofs and filing false claims about roofs needed to be replaced. That's a whole other video. And for the past couple of years, insurance premiums have progressively been going higher and higher for all homeowners here in South Florida, and many of the condo associations as well. Now keep in mind, homeowners have a full policy because they have to insure everything. Condo owners typically only had an interior policy. They only had to have insurance that covered the contents inside the condo building, because the condominium covered the insurance on the outside, and all that was covered in their monthly HOA. But those fees have been going up. How high? One condominium building had their rates go up 209%. So for the majority of homeowners in Florida, insurance premiums are going up 25 to 35%. But for those who live in condominiums, they're getting hit the worst. Why? Because a lot of the insurance companies pulled out due to the lawsuits and storms and for whatever reasons, leaving only a few insurance providers who would write policies on some of these condo buildings. So in many of the places where the one example, their insurance premium for the year was $225,000. It went up to $670,000. Now, who's going to cover that cost? It ain't going to be the board. The condominium is going to pass that cost to each owner of a unit, and they'll split it out and they'll cover the cost. So you have these people who've had HOA fees for a condo like this, maybe for $300 a month. That fee has now gone up to $700, $1,000, in some places $1,500. Now, as I said, take those people who have condominiums that are on a fixed income. They bought that condo 10, 20 years ago, and they were paying $200-300 a month. And now they're forced to pay $700 a month for their HOA fee because of the insurance cost. And that's not all. We're going to get to part two in a little bit. Can you see where the condo crisis is heading to Florida? You're going to have hundreds of thousands of people who just can't afford to pay their monthly HOA fee, which leaves them to doing what? Selling their condo. And it's gotten even worse. There is a condo association or an HOA, I think it was down in Miami. They were having a board meeting. They had to bring the police in.
They called the cops.
A homeowners association meeting at the Mandarin Lakes neighborhood in Naranja Lakes goes off the rails.
Because all the unit owners were so pissed off at the exuberant fees that were they were blindsided. They didn't even know it was coming. And all of a sudden they're hit with these huge fees and they're freaking out. And it got violent. They had to bring the police in to protect the board and kind of keep things under control. So it's going to get ugly, and it's going to get even more ugly when 2025 hits. So, all right, let's talk about part two of the storm. So part two of this video is tied into a tragic event that took place on June 24th, 2021 in Seaside, Florida. The collapse of the Champlain Towers with the loss of 98 lives. So the tragic collapse of the Champlain Towers in Seaside led to some drastic changes in the state of Florida with the Florida Condominium Act. There's a lot of good info coming, so if you like what I'm talking about in this video, which is not my normal video, but if you like it, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. So Florida law requires every condominium's annual budget to include both operating expenses and reserves for capital expenditures and deferred maintenance. So operating expenses are those that occur day to day, right? Just, landscaping, pool, maintenance, stuff like that. Capital expenditures, though, and deferred maintenance are those other more expensive things, like maybe the rails on the condo need to be fixed, right? Maybe they're getting rusted and corroded because all the salt air and salt water does that. Repairs to the roof, the parking lot, things, major structural items for the condominium. And they're supposed to do those studies and put the money and look at what the cost is going to be to fix those long-term items, right? And also set aside the money for things like new patio furniture for the pool or resurfacing the swimming pool, stuff like that. Okay, so here's an example. They do a study, and the study says due to all the corrosion from the salt air and all that, that everyone needs new balconies. We've seen this on condos before. I've seen it looking at properties of buyers. So they know that they're going to need to replace all of these patios, and they need to do it in the next 10 years. They did the study and they see the corrosion, but they know that, the lifespan is about 10 years. They're going to have to redo all this. So they come up with a budget, they get an estimate, and it's $1 million. So they know that they need to set aside $100,000 a year for the next 10 years because they're going to have to redo all the balconies. So they assess each condominium owner X amount of dollars to cover that $100,000, and they set that aside in a reserve, and it stays there until year 10 when they have the money and they pay the contractor and they get all new patios for all the condominium owners, okay? And that makes sense. That seems like a logical thing. But Bill has his condo and he's like, I'm not going to pay an extra $300 a month or whatever, or $3,000 or whatever it is. I'm moving in 5 years. I won't even be here, so I don't care. So he's out. And then his buddy says the same thing. Yeah, I'm sick of South Florida. I'm moving back to New Jersey. Nobody would ever say that in their right mind. And so they basically say, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to pay for it, so I'm not going to be here. And I don't care about the balcony. Let the next guy worry about it. And the crazy thing is, until recently, the state of Florida didn't require condos to have reserve studies. They did have, their annual budgets. And in those budgets, they were supposed to set money aside for reserves and capital expenditures and deferred maintenance. But it also allowed them to waive or reduce the reserve contributions through a membership vote. And guess what those members voted? No. So in May of 2022, the state of Florida amended the Florida Condominium Act, and it did it in two significant ways with respect to the condominiums reserves. Other than Miami, the rest of Florida wasn't required to have an architect or engineer do a study of the condominium building to recertify it. And so you had buildings that were never looked at, theoretically, after they were built. Now, these buildings have to have one every 25 and 30 years. I think there's some stipulations like it has to be 3 stories or higher, and it has to be within a certain proximity to the ocean. But they have to have a reserve study done, and then every 10 years after. So now there's no more not looking at the building. All of these condos that fall in that category or that area will have to have one done. So for the condos that are in those areas, 3 stories or higher and close enough to the beach, they're gonna have what's called a SIRS, S-I-R-S, and that stands for Structural Integrity Reserve Study. And they will have to have that, and it can only be done by an engineer licensed under Chapter 471 or an architect licensed under Chapter 481. So here's where the storm really kicks in. So these condominiums are going to be required by law to have this study done. Architect, engineer, they're going to come in, they have to visually inspect, look at the wood, look at the structure. There's a little question to how they're going to visually inspect a floor's strength, right? How long the floors will last, how long they can keep a building in place, the walls, the integrity of them, without basically doing structural damage to them. I don't quite understand how they're going to do that, but the report I read was saying that they're going to have to look at these buildings and give a visual inspection, and some of the inspectors aren't happy with the way the state of Florida has said this has to be done. But nonetheless, they're going to go and they're going to inspect these condos, and then they're going to get that report back. By the way, these aren't cheap. These studies cost money, and the condos, the boards have to pay for these, meaning the homeowners have to pay for it. And they're going to get the study done, and they're going to give them that study, and there's going to be no more of, we don't want to pay for this. Now, they're going to be required by law to put that money into a reserve fund, and that money is going to be allocated for fixing these major repairs. Now, where are they going to get that money from? The condo owners, of course, the ones who were paying $300 a month, now they're paying $800 a month because their insurance went up. Well, what do you think is going to happen when they get a bill for $2, $3, $10 million because they have to do repairs to the building? You got it. It's going to get passed on to the condo owner. So as I said, until recently, even up to right now, board members were able to vote and decide whether they wanted to allocate the money for that. But come 2025, they're not going to have that option. They are going to be required to put that money into reserve, set aside to pay for all those repairs that condo needs. Wow, look at this. So some of the major things that they're going to be looking for are going to be obviously the walls, the floors, the structural integrity of the condo walls and the floors, fireproofing, the sprinkler systems, painting, windows was added to it, electrical, plumbing, all these big ticket things. Basically anything that could be in excess of $10,000 would be part of this study. Now, windows is an area of, controversy because a lot of condominiums require the condo owners to replace their own windows. So how's the engineer going to do the SEER study and include windows in that study that the condo association is responsible for replacing? So it's not perfect, but they are making strides to, try to get it better. But again, all this is going to come at extreme cost to condominium owners. And add that on top of the high insurance rates. Can you see what I meant by a condo crisis happening here in Florida? You add all that together and people are going to be, they're just not going to be able to afford it. They're going to get hit with assessments of thousands of dollars and monthly HOA fees doubling, even tripling on them. And what are they going to do? I mean, if they can't afford to pay those fees, they're going to have to sell their condo. So, like the storm that's brewing right here on the beach, there's a financial storm coming to Florida, and it is not going to be pretty. I've been talking with a lot of people about this, and you know, every realtor knows it's coming. A lot of condominium owners know it's coming. Don't know what the answer is, but it's going to be a problem, and only time will tell how bad of a problem it will be. So, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I don't make videos like this very often, but I thought this one was extremely important to talk to you about, because one of my most popular videos was called "Don't Buy a Condo in Florida," but it was made way before the collapse, and it was really a video talking to you about how to buy a condo, like things to look out for, you know, HOA fees and how to finance a condo and stuff like that. But if you like this, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you like the content. And for all your real estate needs here in South Florida, feel free to reach out to me. I know a lot of you guys are holding off and not wanting to do any kind of buying or selling. I get that, but use me as a resource. I have a lot of great contacts. I have a lot of experience with real estate here in South Florida for the past 12 years, and I'd be happy to help you. So, all right, I gotta go pick up the kid. He wants to go surfing. The waves are coming in. So until next time, get out, enjoy paradise. I'll talk to you real soon.